So we're continuing with Dead Planet. The dead planet's moon is barren and tide-locked. Once within firing range, the players can tell that the moon is littered with wreckage. There are faint signs of life in the northern hemisphere. If the players inspect the moon closely, they notice the life signs come from a buried underground bunker. 60 kilometers away from the bunker is a huge harpoon gun surrounded by an enormous junk pile. The Brex breakers. And the first one was the Tyrant Beggar Moon Colony. After 10 minutes, a massive electromagnetic tether is fired from the surface of the moon and hits the players. 1 mega damage, and begins pulling it towards the surface. Make a thrusters check at disadvantage for the ship to avoid. Critical success, the ship is able to pull away. The tether and nanofilament cable uncouple safely and return to the surface. During the evasive maneuver, the pilot is able to make out the hidden wreck of the perennial Tyrant, which is to the southeast. Regular success. The ship is able to pull away, and you get another mega damage. Failure. The ship gets pulled to the surface. The crew has 5 minutes to prepare before the ship is grounded. And critical failure is very bad. Lost in the dunes. Roll 2d10 for the exact location of the map's grid, and re-roll it if landing on a red dot. The ship lands within 5 squares of Tyrant Beggar. 12 Bakers arrive on foot within 4 hours. Otherwise, no one comes. The wreck of the perennial Tyrant has 14 MREs, a weapons cache, and parts for repairs. Within 3 days, Dean will arrive and beg for help on his doomed mission to the planet below. Harpoon gun and scrapyard, the ship crash lands into a massive junk pile and is immediately boarded by 8 breakers, led by Brett. In 1910, you land on the Tyrant Beggar moon base. The ship crash lands 3 kilometers away from the underground bunker. Within 15 minutes, they are approached by Verger and Calm. Barren and uninhabited, the dunes are lifeless, airless desert. Roll 1d10 when passing through a dune. 1 to 4 is nothing. Right shade. Nothing, just dirt, moon, rock, and nothing. Again. And scrap unusable wreckage from orbit. Or weapons cache. How far can they walk? The players can walk roughly 10 kilometers per day over 8 hours on the broken terrain in their backsuits and armor. After 10 kilometers, the players are considered exhausted. The moon experiences 2 weeks of sunlight followed by 2 weeks of darkness. If the crash hasn't already caused this, the crew will eventually run out of food, water, oxygen. When the ship crashes, roll 1d10 and multiply that by the ship's maximum crew capacity to determine the remaining oxygen supply. If the players set out on foot to make it to the bunker, they can do so and generally won't get lost. Let them know how far away they are from their destination, what their chances of survival are, so they can make those decisions. Resting on the moon has its consequences. Proximity to the god and their gate causes nightmares for those who wish rest in this barren wasteland. Why are there wrecker cannibals on the moon? A decade ago, strange energies caused the colony construction vessel Perennial Tyrant to crash into the dead planet's moon. The desolate plains of the moon were witness to the rapid repurposing of the Perennial Tyrant into shelter, sullenly Christian, Tyrant Beggar by its grim yet stoic inhabitants. Tyrant Beggar is sustained by a society predicated on ritual cannibalism, a collective emphasis on survival, the denial of reality, scavenging, and nightmares. What are these moon cannibals like? The inhabitants of Tyrant Beggar are somewhat incomprehensible to outsiders because of the necessity of cannibalism to sustain themselves early on. Every member of the colony demonstrates the willingness to put the colony first by imputing part of themselves to be fixed into the common meal. As a corollary, prosthetics are a common sight. However, parts are not simply hacked off and tossed into a stew pot. Rather, John the Ripper is lauded for his devotion and skill at ritual amputation. Despite accidents that occasionally happen when others flinch, overall, prestige is accrued among the colonists in direct proportion to the amount of themselves they have offered. Among those who enjoy the highest status is Malta, whose legs were amputated. She is now wheelchair-bound, holding certain positions of social authority, such as being a goat herder or administrator, are predicated upon a significant volume of excision. John the Ripper is additionally esteemed as his donations have reduced his hands to the absolute minimum necessary for his job. Notably, the ceremony is almost completely unnecessary. The colony has mangy goats scavenged from another wreck that provide them with sour milk and meat. Still, rituals are an important part of societal cohesion. The subterranean lifestyle produces sensitivity to light among its citizens. To compensate, many wear dark goggles, sunglasses, or even surgically remove their eyes. There is certainly a vogue for wearing blindfolds with eyes printed on them. The squalid lives of the inhabitants are spent in a claustrophobic, tenebrific, musky warren, where they experience unabating angst over the scarcity of water, food, and air. Casual conversation generally touches on these topics. Minimum stress +2 while at Tyrant Beggar. What happens when the crew approaches this awful place? When the crew approach the colony, they will be hailed by half an android strapped to the chest of a scrawny, excitable dullard, Virger, The android Calm dispassionately explains that the crew has landed on the moon of the dead planet, which is inescapable. Jump drives don't work here, and this moon is in the isolated hinterlands far from civilization. This is truly the worst place. Chipperly, she informs the crew of the subterranean colony and offers conditional membership, guaranteeing the crew's continued survival. They could even aspire to be full citizens. Should the crew need food, water, medicine, or other mundanities, Calm assures the crew of their availability beneath the surface. She is quick to add that this hospitality is conditional upon the crew contributing to their scavenging efforts. She gestures nonchalantly towards a derelict being hauled to the surface by the giant rigging guns and surrendering their ship and all possessions to the collective. If the crew rejects Calm's offer, Calm is nonplussed and placidly admits the colony will simply wait for them to die. Whether the cause is starvation, cabin fever, or some other grisly end is immaterial. She takes pains to express that she sees this as regrettable and a senseless waste of life. The colony will respect the boundaries of the ship and even engage in trade for items the colony needs. Otherwise, they view the contents of the ship as inevitably becoming theirs and believe plundering the ship would be a gratuitous squandering of finite resources. There will always be 2 scouts on the horizon watching the ship. Dean will try to sneak aboard 2 days. If the crew attacks, the colonists deal with the crew in a swift and brutal fashion. Tactically, the colonists will not engage a well-armed crew head-on. Instead, they will slink back into their shelter and utilize their familiarity of the terrain to spring ambushes and quickly melt back into the shadows. A small group will sneak off to destroy the life support system on the player's ship and steal their food and water. The colonists will then seal off their base when the crew retreats. If their goats are threatened in any way, the colonists relentlessly assault the crew until every member is dead. For combat purposes, assume there are 30 willing fighters in the colony, 50 if defending from an invasion. If the crew accepts Calm's offer, the colonists lead the crew to the quarantine cells and swiftly subject them to a harrowing and intrusive battery of security measures. The crew is stripped, hosed down with cold water, scanned for viruses, and inspected like livestock. They may nominate their amputation site before being issued with an ill-fitting jumpsuit, with sighted stenciled across the shoulders. Their next week is intermittent medical prodding, culture shock, and feedings before they're admitted with a cheerlessness that lacks hostility as provisional members of the colony. Voluntary amputation. Yes, to join the colony, the crew must amputate some part of themselves for a common meal, ostensibly in honor of the desperate founders of Tyrant Beggar. They do get to partake in the meal with a fear save. Androids are not exempt from this ritual. Timeline of events that will happen if the players do nothing. Day 1, players get out of quarantine, or Tyrant Beggar sends out a search party for your crashed ship. Day 2, Malta asks the players about getting Dean to quiet down and disappear, or Dean tries to sneak aboard your ship. Day 3, Dean will ask the players about joining his movement to flee to the surface of the dead planet. 4, Verger secretly contacts the players and asks them to break Lear's hands. He thinks her sculptures are bad and make her sad. Day 5. This feels like this could have been a little bit. I guess Dean must be part of the youth faction. Civil war breaks out as the youth faction stand off against Malta's loyalists. Day 6, Lear finishes the dead gate in the sculpture garden, unwittingly. Dozens of gaunt stream through every hour. Day 7, Breck's crew finishes repairs on the Lucifer Rising and set off on their 100-year journey. They have room for 6 people. Parent Baker Moon Base. Human population 56. Android 3. Lighting dim fluorescence. Days of food left 34. Mood restless. So 1, the quarantine cells, several small, cramped, and dingy prison cells with slots in their doors for feeding and communication. 2, the common area. No matter the time, citizens mill about idly in this dingy space, cluttered with scavenged, mismatched furniture. There are also a collective ramshackle kitchen and some dig pits that serve as bathrooms. When the crew enters the common area, 2 D10 colonists are taking a respite here. Roll on the table below for the most notable going on. Troop of wretched, grubby children. 1 leg amputated to the calf. Oh, I should probably roll for each column. With one of them having a noticeable amputation to the elbow. And these children are drinking fuel distillate alcohol. You find a simple goat tender with his ear removed, and he's practicing reading Braille. Several stern elderly women, a 2 toes amputated awkward gait, and compares impressions of the latest sculpture. 3 dormitories. Smells like a fetid locker room with the humidity to match. The space is crowded with far more somnambulant people, some naked, than there are bunks, fashioned from repurposed cryopods, crammed together. Despite the omnipresent lines festooned with hanging clothes and the occasional impromptu curtain, privacy is impossible. Gear, including clothing left unintended, will be stolen. 4. The goat farm. The relentless, brutal cycle of involuntary cannibalism was made obsolete when Breck's crew recovered these goats while scavenging. Despite the goats' somewhat haggard appearance, they are figures of awe among the colonists and treated better than any citizen could aspire to be. On account of their value, access to the goats is restricted to a privileged few. 5 facilities, dominated by a hazardously jury-rigged brick lodge, a scavenged life support systems and dilapidated generators running on scavenged fuel. 6. Medical Chapel, the Dominion of John the Ripper, a gleaming pristine medbay enhanced and expanded with the finest pieces looted from every subsequent wreck, the facilities having notable emphasis on amputation. 7. Machine Shop, smells heavily of grease and worked metal overlaid with the grunting perspiration of machinists. There are two 10-man ATVs, one currently operational. The other is awaiting scavenged parts for necessary repairs. The shop is well stocked with tools, although the collection is eclectic. 9. Control. The surveillance center of the base, monitors fed from a multitude of hidden cameras document the bleak quotidian experience of life in Tyrant Beggar. One wall, free of screens, is devoted to a chalkboard coded in the arcane calculations tracking stores of food and water. Adjacent is a corkboard with photographs of candidates for disposal, should the need arise, along with preemptive justifications. The disposable colonists are largely newcomers or troublemakers. Malta passes most of her time here voyeuristically transcribing the lives of others, accompanied by the occasional bon mot. Calm is also largely confined here, except when she patrols the base mounted on verdure. 10. Nightmarish Sculpture Garden. Inhabitants of Tyrant Beggar are unlikely to be anything approximating psychologically well. The collective trauma experience of the colonists has always coalesced into crafts with a particular fixation on sculpture. The room is a repository for many tiny sculptures produced daily by the colonists. Unbeknownst to them, their nightmare sculptures are less therapy and more a point of entry for the gaunt. Lear, in particular, has a mania for sculpting and works on her pieces until she collapses, possessed, to complete her sculptures. She is 5 days away from completing the gate, when 2d10 Gaunt will invade from their awful dimension every hour, unceasingly. Ketonic Catharsis. Several youth on Tyrant Beggar have heard a broadcast from the surface and are very exhilarated by the prospect of not living their life in a suffocating underground structure, eating goat and gruel supplemented with human flesh. Of particular suspected gratification is the potential to experience the entire theoretical concept of personal space. A small group led by a precocious, overly enthusiastic youth named Dean is formulating a plan to steal the cruise ship and pilot it to the surface. The plan is met with derision. The inhabitants of Tyrant Beggar did not survive by taking risks, and Malta is looking for a pretext to dispose of the lot of them, or at least Dean. Let's face it, the teenagers are doomed. They were raised in total isolation and indoctrinated with atypical beliefs that are socially disastrous to conversing with anyone outside the colony. More pressingly, they are almost completely ignorant when it comes to hazards outside the fragmentary knowledge gleaned from scavenging derelict ships. It's comical. They don't stand a chance. Malta really wants to nip the problem in the bud. The crew wants to lounge around Beggar. That's fine. The inhabitants will become fiercely polarized about abandoning the colony for the surface, largely along the lines of age and social status, with increasingly violent results. No one trusts a neutral party. Malta or another administrator may plead with the crew to describe the horrors outside of Tyrant Beggar, or may simply ask them to ruthlessly call the opposing side before the matter comes to a vote. Comorbid with these tensions is the growing influence of the Gaunt through Lear's sculpted gate. The crew may obviously want to leave sooner. In the case that they don't, a civil war breaks out. This is an excellent opportunity for the crew to pilfer any valuables, scavenge anything needed for repairs, abscond with any likely crew, and vamoose to the surface. The first broadcast. After the crash, the Defiance Queen Omni Supreme 9494 Yankee Helios Foxtrot. This is Lance Corporal Victoria Bradley. Allow me to repeat, Queen Omni Supreme 490. No one is going to hear this. I'd like to make a confession. After the things we did in that force, this almost seems nice, relaxing. No screams, no disputes, just rocks and fishing with all the water. The captain is convinced there's a big payday here, some bomb, maybe some artifacts to loot and get rich off of, some antique dealer. It'll all be junk though. That seems just about our luck. At least this place is too empty for us to have any hostiles. Captain can't see the wasteland for the total emptiness, so still guard up. What's saying the captain loves so much? The more hardship, the better. At least the weather's nice. This hardship had better pay off because I didn't sign on for being stranded in the middle of nowhere. As I say, hero come un poisson sur le poil. But half the unit forgot the comms code. Yet another exciting task. Yankee Helios Foxtrot 9449. Dean understands this to mean the surface is full of valuable things and that potable water and fish are plentiful. The parts he doesn't understand, he hand waves away. The second broadcast, Salt Echo Queen 13093 ready 65 Parasol Actum 03246/16. This is Lance Corporal Victoria Bradley, Firearms Archipelago, Desperado July Octum, Avoir des Anglers Oya. We crushed La Sans-Culotte, but an empty building apparently has 3 fire teams down. You expect me to believe this? The stupid prank merits La Salvate. Well, if this is time, sound of a round being racked, have no toys, comme tu, as Lean says. Maybe I'll finally understand how there's freedom in living as if one has already died. This is Lance Corporal Victoria Bradley. It has been a pleasure to serve. This message is cause for consternation among the young dissident faction. They're deeply confused by the use of Napoleonic military slang, something the crew of the Defiance utilized in lieu of other cryptography. Dean is convinced they've discovered something amazing and are trying to keep it for themselves. The others are more leery, but still view the surface as a worthwhile pursuit. The second message is broadcast the first day the crew are released from quarantine. Interpretations proliferate and fuel schisms. Brex Breakers, human population 13. No, androids. Brex work crew, the Breakers, work grueling 2-week shifts. However, their occupation grants them a degree of personal freedom. The only authority figure they are truly loyal to is Brecht. They know the colony will fail without them, which insulates them from punishment. This greater freedom translates most notably into a lack of major amputation, for which they are treated with a mix of envy, spite, and pity. This friction is exacerbated by their free access to pet and admire the goats whenever they would like. For these privileges, the Breakers spend their time in poorly maintained vac suits, carrying scrap from orbit and breaking it down. Additionally, they are to salvage ships likely to contain goods that are in short supply. Their personal freedom, insubordinate attitude, and utter devotion to Brecht vexes Malta. She simply lacks a way to cow them without dooming the colony. However, whenever the colony is in dire need, it's always the Breakers who get the brunt of the blame. 1. The Scrapyard. A Coliseum-sized junk heap contains the dross from the harvest of ships, wrecks, derelicts, and the occasional asteroid. If the players need a part, 50% chance Breck or a Breaker knows its location. Otherwise, speed check. Success, found in 1D 5 hours. Failure, found in 2D 10 hours. 2. Barracks, spacious, private, comfortable, berth for a dozen or so. The finest scavenged bunks wind up here. The ceiling and walls are excessively bedecked with trinkets the breakers find. 3. Breck's trailer. The trailer is completely consumed with the task of researching where they are, using every available star net in order to plot an escape. This has been Breck's singular focus for 4 years, and the maps are nearly incomprehensible without guidance. 4. Janice. The gargantuan scrapping machine used by the breakers, affectionately named Janice, can break down, smash, crush, cube, and strip anything, including, if one believes dark rumors, Breck's enemies. 5. Lucifer's Rising. Breck and a secretive few have devoted the last 4 years to the construction of a nearly completed spaceship. It is a Frankenstein's monster of mismatched parts, but completely functional once some parts from the player's ship are added. The breakers are uniformly aware there is a secret project, but the uninvolved assume it's a distillery. Once completed, the Lucifer Rising only has room for 6 additional passengers. The trip involves setting a course for where Brecht believes the nearest civilization is, 100 years away, and riding it in cryosleep, a so-called coffin run. If Malta is made aware of the ship, she will attempt to destroy it. She will reward any players who take part with the vacated jobs for the wet work and gives them a collection of unrelated shiny medals recognizing their valor. So it looks like we've got a little bit of time to go through the first couple of these tables. So, some kind of behavioral tics. A genius. One skill they are perfect at, they cannot explain why their answer is right, but their answer is always right. They otherwise have disadvantage at all skills, unless there is a cross-pollination with their area of expertise. A slightly gross behavior. Adjusts themselves constantly, loudly shares the status of their digestion as part of regular conversation, picks nose or scabs, talks about their fetishes in great detail, unprompted, etc. Benign annoyance. Taps pen on teeth, drums fingers when waiting, flicks Zippo open and closed, minor situational catchphrase, etc. Some names might be Peter Budage, Donata Langerfield, or Carter Harrison. Searching the vault has at least 1d10 of any listed good in the player survival guide. Without help from either Malta or Brecht, make a speed check. Success 1d10 minutes, to find failure 1d10 hours. If just poking around, roll 1d100. The result is the most interesting thing found in 10 minutes searching. So you might find a bottle of 18-year-old scotch, the book Heptameron, or perhaps, or perhaps Zentai. Nightmares, sculptures, and compulsions. Whenever players attempt to rest and fail, they have a nightmare and gain 1 stress. Note the result from the nightmare table. Wardens are encouraged to make nightmare checks after any traumatic event or any day in which a crew member failed a panic check, as well as whenever they rest on the dead planet. Reoccurring nightmares. If a player ever has the same nightmare again, this causes 2 stress and becomes their sole reoccurring nightmare. It's that same nightmare every time from now on. Additionally, after a player has the same recurring nightmare 3 times, they gain a new condition, nightmares. They gain 1d5 stress whenever they have a nightmare. When to check for nightmares? On the moon once a week, on Tyrant Beggar every other night, on the dead planet every night. Compulsive sculpting. Failing 2 or more nightmare checks while significantly exposed to the gaunt, including carrying around artifacts, causes players to wake up with a compulsion to sculpt a small, terrifying object. Roll on the table below to figure out what they'll need to sculpt with. They have 1d10 days to sculpt the object, or else they have to make a panic check when it's least convenient. Every day they don't finish the sculpture, they gain 1d5 stress. Once the object is made, they have the choice on future nightmare checks to take no stress at all and have no nightmare, but build another sculpture, or take stress equal to the number of sculptures they have created. Whenever a sculpture is created, the warden rolls d100. If the result is equal or less than the total number of sculptures the crew possesses, including those they do not make, the sculptures form a gaunt gate, and gaunt starts streaming through within 1d5 days. Losing any sculptures or destroying one reduces a random save by 1d10. So you might have made one out of disassembled iron arms that is sharp, that has a religious connotation, that is palpitating, hands, serrated, hooves. Compulsive nightmare-ish sculpture table. There are 3, okay. We'll roll, let's go ahead and maybe roll 10 of these nightmares, and then we'll wrap it up here. So 001, your jaw unhinges as you vomit a torrent of earwigs. '74. You're at the end of the dock. Everything stinks of salt and rotting fish. Your feet squelch pointlessly on the concrete. They smoke cigarettes and they're at you. They're coming over to push you. 66. You bleed the pigs, all of them, in their fine jewelry and spotless dinner jackets. 47. He splatters his cravat with viscera. When he cuts your hand off, you roll on the floor. He cauterizes the stump with a hot plate. You line up your shot at the retreating figure. He spins around and shoots first. 17. Figures flit about in the hanging fabric. You can't quite make them out, but they seem familiar. You aren't certain if you're the hunter or the quarry. And this will be our final one. The walls creep in only when you close your eyes. Remain vigilant. So we might be able to finish this next time. We'll see. So looks like we'll be finding out about the actual planet itself. I'm not sure when. Yeah, I'm kind of don't really have much planned, so I'm not sure when the next time we'll be working on this. I think I kind of wanted to try finishing Dominaria tomorrow, but since I don't really have any openings planned right now, maybe we'll finish this on Thursday. Probably won't be any additional streams tonight. So yeah, I guess tomorrow for Dominaria will probably be our next stream.